Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals and we invite friends on to help us. And today, Shellee Howard is with us, and she's going to share a little bit of a different aspect, although we could talk about, Shellee, how you got going, starting your own business as an entrepreneur. But we're also going to talk about a subject that's near and dear to her heart, which is student loan debt or the lack thereof. So, Shellee, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really excited to hear what you have to share.
My pleasure. I look forward to helping the people who are listening.
Super. Well, that's something there's a real stage and a lot of folks who I'm trying to help them buy a house and they're just saddled with so much student loan debt. Like, some of them are doctors, they have $250,000 worth of student loan debt. I mean, what a horrible way to start your life. Tell me, give us some background about how you came to this point and how you sort of became the college ready, get ready for college without tons of debt person.
Well, it really started back in 2008. So this is our 13th application season. Excellent. And it started with my oldest. He came home from 8th grade and, like all excited young people, he's like, Mom, I know exactly what I want to be when I grow up. And I know what school I want to go to. And I'm like, really? Because I know a lot of adults who still don't know. And he said, yeah, very matter of fact, I want to be a brain surgeon. I want to go to a top tier school. And I was like, okay, we've got some work ahead of us.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so that's really how I got into this world. I was the first to go to college on both sides of my family. And I can honestly say I did not do it very well. I did end up graduating with honors. So on the end of it was great. And then I went and got my master's. So that helped. But man, to get there was a really rough path. So I knew that I wanted to do something very different for my kids because unfortunately the high school counselor at my high school was not helpful and there was no other resources. So my big plan was either to go to Colorado and snow ski or go to San Diego and surf. That was like my whole college plan. Yeah. So you can see that I've come a long way. Now we help students all over the world not only get into college, but graduate debt free.
That's fantastic. That is like a dream, I think, for most people who are thinking about college, the idea of getting out and just being able to keep some of the money you make in the first 25 years of your career would be fantastic, right?
Yeah. And it's a reality. So I became a huge advocate for this because when we started looking at the cost of college, I was a single mom and I knew that even if my son got into Harvard, I couldn't afford $63,000 a year as a single mom with another child. I'm like, your child cannot assume this loan. You have to co-sign. And I was terrified. So this is my 7th business. And I took it as an entrepreneur and I'm like, let's start with the end in mind. Let's figure out this return on investment. Let's think about where we're going to get the most money. And before you knew it, my son had 7 full ride offers, went to Harvard and graduated debt free.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's a dream. I mean, really, how did you accomplish that? I mean, where did you even know how to begin, where to look for resources and stuff?
Yeah, all of that was a bit challenging, especially back then. I know everybody takes the internet for granted now, but back then it wasn't quite as accessible. And so what I ended up doing is I went back to school and I got my certification in college consulting from UC San Diego. I figured if I had the education and foundation, that would be the one thing. No. That was just another piece of paper to add behind my name. What I really found is I was working, I had my own job at the time. I was a professional photographer making 6 figures, just loving it. And on top of that job, I would come home and research like crazy, 40 hours a week, and then just made a plan for my son. And, I have to give him a lot of credit. He followed the plan without arguing. It does take that motivation and that, okay, Mom, I'll do it without giving you a hard time.
And that's a novelty in itself, right?
Yeah.
For a teenager.
Yeah. And so he was very on board and everything I recommended, he did. And, I tell families, he didn't have the best GPA. He didn't have the best test score. He didn't have the most community service hours. His standout strategy was what got him into 7 top tier schools. And that's how we help these students stand out, because last year, our students earned $10.7 million in scholarships that was on top of need-based. These are families who make too much money to get free money.
Wow.
And so what we did is we worked on the standout strategy as we're helping the student one-on-one be the best version of them. Oh, by the way, that will help them get through life.
Right.
We're also helping the family understand how to lower their expected family contribution, how to complete the FAFSA, what's on the FAFSA. FAFSA looks at some things, FAFSA doesn't look at other things. Just like the tax people, they spell it out, but nobody reads it. So I help families, really kind of make it easy to understand. So as the family is getting their financial house in order, which has to be done the second semester of the sophomore year and the first semester of the junior year, nobody's talking about college until the end of the junior year, the beginning of the senior year, and then
Right.
it's too late.
Right.
It's like in your world, it's like buying a house you can't afford and then asking, how am I going to pay for it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, do you understand? Like they apply, they let their 17-year-old apply to all of these colleges that they don't know how they're going to pay for.
Right.
And their strategy is, oh, if they get in, we'll figure it out.
Right.
The problem is there's no figuring it out. If they apply to the wrong college, you could be stuck with a massive amount of debt.
Wow. So is this standout strategy? I'm assuming it would be different for each person, right?
Absolutely. If you
Wow.
think about a student whose gifts and talents are math and science, they're going to have a very different strategy than somebody who is history, English, or even visual and performing arts, or an athlete. So every one of our students, I complete a standout strategy as if I'm building their business. So I take my gift of being an entrepreneur and my knowledge of being a certified college consultant, I marry the two together, and I can build the most amazing student while they have a ton of fun figuring out who they are and why it matters.
Wow, that is so valuable. Like you said, not just for their college career. That's something that I think adults need to do, right? People 50 years old should be doing that.
I've had many parents ask if they can sign up for the course just to get that piece of it. Because, most people in college consulting or high school consulting, whatever you want to call it, if a student is good at math, they'll say, oh, go be an engineer and go to MIT. But they're not talking about, is that a good academic fit, a social fit, financial fit? Like, that is usually not the best solution for all three of those options.
Right.
We do it very different. We first get to know who the student is, why they matter. And then we build their strategy to get into the school that is a good fit for them academically, socially, and financially.
And how do you do that? I mean, do you have a database of what different schools offer in terms of those 3 components?
Yes, I have built an online cloud-based portal, and I belong to an organization called HECA, which is our ethics organization for college consultants. It's kind of like your realtor's board, if you will. And what they do is they provide us with actual data from the colleges. So it's not US News and World Report junk. It is truly real information. I then input that into my cloud-based password protected portal, and the student can go in there and put in their GPA, their test score, their service hours, their leadership, their extracurricular, their essays, and it has an algorithm that actually shows them, based on who got in last year, what their chances of getting in and how they can improve.
Wow, that's amazing. So that database, you obviously, you've got the information from the colleges, but you must have done all the back end work to get to where they can make those recommendations.
Yeah.
And there are how many colleges
Well, there's thousands. And not only that, we're also looking at international schools. A lot of students right now are thinking, what are my options to not go in debt? And honestly, for somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter where you graduate from college, right?
Right.
It doesn't. As long as you have that fallback degree, just in case. The reality is you can go to college for free. I was just in Croatia about 2 months ago, and I was interviewing the staff there. It costs nothing to go to college there, and they give you a stipend for lunch. So not all, I mean, it's free and they're giving you food.
They
And you're
feed you
getting this,
what?
yeah, and you're getting this college degree while traveling Europe. Now, this is not a great strategy if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, if you want to go into corporate America, because it does matter what your degree is in and where you get it from. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the standout strategy. What is the return on investment? If a student wants to go into psychology, there's no job called psychology.
Right.
So what happens? They get out of college and they're looking for a job and they're like, there are no jobs, mom and dad. Well, yeah,
I'm coming to live at home.
that's because nobody thought the process through, that the student would have to go on and get their, extra education or a major in women's studies. I love the idea, but where's the job title that belongs to women's studies?
Right.
So these kids are making decisions based on what their passion is, but nobody's talking about how long will they have to work for free after they graduate.
Right.
That's the reality we gently share with our teenagers.
So how do you scale this? I mean, this seems like such an intensive process that you would have to spend hours with each student, to kind of.
Yeah, we have the most amazing consultants. I've certified them all personally with, years of experience. And I mean, most of my consultants have more experience than I do. They just don't want to run the business.
Yeah.
One of them was the dean of students for the Claremont McKenna schools. I mean, the dean, who doesn't understand college admissions better than her?
Exactly.
So
wow.
She came to me saying, I don't want to do that anymore, but I just want to help students. We have college consultants like her that work my strategy and my plan, and one-on-one help each student understand what their gifts and their talents are and how they're going to stand out. It's amazing. It's so competitive than it ever had. I mean, I had 3 students this year with a 5.0 GPA and a perfect 36 ACT. 3 of them. It wasn't just one of them. These students are coming with so much knowledge, desire, and ready to do what it takes. They just come to us and we're like, try this, do this. And then our really the key is we have each of our students do what's called passion with purpose. We believe that if every high schooler did at least 200 service hours or more by the time they graduated high school, our world would be a much better environment.
For sure.
So we're doing our part. We will not take a student if they are not willing to do at least 200 service hours in something that they're truly passionate about, something they want to see changed in our world, and something they can lead others to create that change while they have the mentorship and support of my staff.
Wow, that's fantastic. So what's sort of the procedure? Like if I say, okay, I know that I want to grow up and become, I don't know, well, let's say an entrepreneur.
The beauty is entrepreneur is glamorized right now because of what's happened with Zuckerberg, what's happened with the dropouts who make it huge, but they don't know all the other dropouts who are truly couch surfing.
Right.
And so we get really clear about who they are. And most of the time they don't know. I've had students ask Siri, who am I? Like they have no clue, because they spend so much time on social media looking at everybody else's wonderful life.
Yeah.
They're not out on the street playing till dark to figure out, am I fast or am I slow?
Yeah.
All those skills we learned as children, they're missing out on. Yeah. And they're so busy chasing what they think colleges want And colleges only want them to be them.
Yeah.
Which is the most bizarre part, is they do all of this stuff, they're exhausted. And then when I meet with them, we simplify, and now they are enjoying life, and they are simply have more time to enjoy being a teenager. It's really counterintuitive to what these families are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Wow. Well, one of the things that you said about starting when the child is younger, I mean, I know it's absolutely true that people are like, oh, go get accepted. And then we'll see what this school is going to offer us in terms of, what will this school give us for money, for, some type of whatever, rather than saying what other money is out there available. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like where do you find money? Where do you, like you were saying before about a person who isn't good at math, they're going to go to MIT and be an engineer. Well, maybe the best place to be an engineer isn't at MIT, because everybody might be an engineer there, right? I mean, it just seems so nuancy. And can you just talk a little bit about like, does it differ where you're going to find money based on what the student's goals are and things?
That's how detailed it is. And the best money comes from the universities, not from teeny tiny independent bait and switch scholarships. I tell families all the time, two things: get a Gmail that you don't care about and give it to all the scholarship people, because they will blow up your email to the point where you're going to have to shut it down. The second thing is, if a scholarship does not require an essay, it is not legit. Just know. And guess what? Teenagers don't want to write extra essays. It's hard enough to get them to write college essays. They're going to do the ones that are easy, that say, so do your parents work? What do they do? How much do they make? Do they own a home? And all of a sudden your teenager is like, yeah, I'm doing scholarships, mom and dad. And all they're doing is sharing your private information.
Right. Wow.
That's a bit terrifying, right?
Yeah.
But when you leave it to a 17-year-old who would rather be doing something else, that's the disaster that happens. Our families who work with us, what we do is we help them first figure out what is the student's gifts and talents, because that's really what they have to work with, right? From there, we help them to find the best match college. So think about it this way. If you own a business and I bring you a deep, awesome resume, are you going to pay me more than the person who brings you no resume?
Absolutely.
It's that simple. So when you look at it from a truly business, get rid of all the emotion, all the good football programs and all of the stuff, and you really think about this as a business. Colleges need your student as much as you need a college. They are willing to give a ton of money to students who have earned it. So if a student has this amazing resume, they will get paid for it. If a student is showing that they do nothing but play, video games when they're not in school, that's the reality. Right. You're not going to get paid for not putting in the effort.
Right.
That's where the money comes from. There are insane amount of money that the alumni gives to all of their colleges. And that's the money to tap into. So that's where we help our students understand there are actually 13 colleges that are tuition free. Yeah, totally free. Right. And so people are like, well, I can't afford to go to college. Well, it's free.
Yeah.
Does that mean you can go to UC Santa Barbara and live on Isla Vista? And, no, it means you're going to probably be in Arkansas or Nebraska or Montana. But if ultimately it's 4 years to a college degree, right, and it's free, that's where the reality gets into play between the academic, the social, and the financial. When I ask a student, they say social's most important, then academic and social. If you're not with your student, that's where the problem is. These are the things we help our families get clear on way before they apply. Every application costs your family between $75 and $150 just to apply. On top of that, each school has between 5 and 12 essays. You start adding up
Wow.
what it takes to get into college. And if you're just allowing your 15 or 16-year-old, would you allow them to go and buy you a home? Because that's what we're talking about. Some colleges are going to be $300,000 to $400,000.
Yeah, by the time you're done. Wow.
Yeah, you would never let that. What
Right.
about buying a car? Would you ever let your teenager just go onto the car lot and go, yeah, I want the red one. It's awesome.
Exactly.
I'm going to
When
pay
you do the
this
research, I'll
ride.
pay the bill.
Right? But that happens so often. I get all the time. Well, they need to be mature enough. They need to show us that they want to go to college. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is not the time to prove their inability to make good decisions.
Anybody hear of frontal lobe development here?
It is a bit scary, honestly, because, even if you did go to college and you're a parent, it's nothing like it used to be. So the teenager comes to the mom or the dad and says, hey, can you help me? And instead of saying, no, not really, but I'll get you help, they're like, oh, you've got this, go figure it out. It's, you want to go to college, you figure it out. That is where the tragedy is happening, is that disconnect. It's not that the parents don't want to help. They just don't know how to help.
Well, and the paradigm that's there, like you say, the way the parents and even potentially some of the people in guidance, some of the people who are supposed to be helping them at the high school level, the way it used to work, right? You just picked a school and then you went and, what's the big deal? It's $5,000 or whatever. And, and now it's a down payment on a house, at least, to go to these colleges. And they don't perhaps, I mean, I certainly didn't understand. I don't have children, but I know people who do, and I don't think any of them are understanding this process at all.
Right. Yeah. So it's important. We start to work with students as young as when they promote from 8th grade. And people are like, that's so early. Is it too early to help them figure out what their gifts and talents are? What are their dreams and aspirations? Because that's all we do when they're younger. We're just giving them that kickstart that most adults wish they had.
Yeah.
And that is a outside, it's not a mom or a dad who has their, ideas.
Right.
It is me helping a student get their dream. They'll do whatever I ask them to do because I'm only there to help them get what they want.
Right.
That is the beauty of starting early. I get seniors who call me and say, I know I'm early. And I'm like, whoa, early for what?
Too late, dude.
So it is challenging. And if people want to do a reduced or free education, everything has to be in order. It can't just be my kid's brilliant, they have a good GPA. That is not going to cut it.
Welcome to the club, right?
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how about this idea of like when you were saying, like, say you're a senior and you are already too late. What is the impression from schools of like a gap year where you just sort of say, okay, I'm just going to work for a year or travel for a year or something like that? Could that help them to bridge that gap and still give them a year to get ready for the things they have to do?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. And every school handles it differently. Our top tier schools, the Ivies, they get a lot more of deferment, which means they get accepted and then they do a gap year. But that gap year has to be something in writing what their plan is. It's not, I'm just going to chill because I'm feeling a little stressed out. It's truly, I'm going to go visit these countries in this order, and this is what I hope to accomplish, and this is my goals, and da 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 da. It's not, I just don't feel like going to college for a year. And then obviously with the pandemic, we had to be very careful because if they did take a gap year, there was no travel.
Right.
What were they going to do? Yeah. And so you couldn't even use that. So if a student has a good reason for deferment or for a gap year, like joining the Peace Corps or doing something super meaningful, thought out, planned, colleges are very receptive. If it is just, I'm not ready for college, they are better off going to a small state school and paying, a very small tuition. And at least they're making progress until they figure it out. Most local state schools will accept a student with over a 3.0 GPA. So it's not very tough to get in. Of course, the California ones are always the exception because this is where everybody wants to live. But the reality is, most students can get into a state school without too much trouble and without any essays. So the fact that all they have to do, it takes about maybe 20 or 30 minutes to apply. It's really not that difficult. And it is
put your
great
visa information in and you're all set, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I tell families all the time. One, that's not one size fits all. I have some students who are on the spectrum and they need to be close to home. I have other students who are student athletes and they are going wherever their scholarship is coming from.
Yeah.
It's whatever the student and the family needs is what we focus on.
So I'm wondering, do you have some sort of way, like algorithms or some sort of questionnaires or something? Like, how do you, it just seems like it's such a huge amount of information to compile in order to serve these students in the best way individually, right? Because each student has such individual needs.
Yeah, well, I think that's 13 years of my experience. Probably I would lean on the heaviest. The other piece is we spend a lot of time working on the long-term and short-term goals of the student. We play this game, it's called the Millionaire Game. And I ask my student, if I gave you $1 million cash today and you had 24 hours to spend it, what would you do? If you didn't spend it, you have to give it back. You find out very quickly, are they into possessions? Are they into giving? Are they into themselves? Who are they? When you give somebody a boatload of money that they can spend any which way, that's how we figure it out. So instead of like a bunch of fill in the blank, another quiz, and we have those, don't get me wrong. And some people like to use them. But my son, who's now an orthopedic surgeon, he did one of those tests and it said he should be a grape farmer. So he does use his hands.
Well, they're similar.
Yeah, but not quite the way, we were like, he didn't even like dirt. Like, what? So
I didn't even think that would be like a career path. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So, that's how so when my daughter was unsure, she's my second, instead of just kept asking her, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And she's like, I don't know. I took her and we served in Peru for an orphanage. Wow. And I wanted her to see, do you like children? Do you like to help the needy? What is your thing? More importantly, what do you like, what you don't like? What we found out is I don't like dirty little children and she loves them. She bought lotion for them and she cleaned them and she got them clothes and her heart is huge. She's now a pediatric registered nurse. So we go about it in ways that allow the student to explore, experiment while we're guiding them to help them analyze, what do I like? What don't I like? Do I like sales? Do I like a research lab? Very different.
Right.
So those are the opportunities. We help students get research projects. We help students get internships. And then the passion project, all of these is letting them test the waters when it's safe.
Yeah.
And so that is how we do it. And part of my master's thesis, what I did is I took the label off of all the colleges and I had the student match to the core of the college. And then I put the label back on. And so that's what we use as part of figuring out what is the best match. We don't go by a brand name. We go by what does the student need? A big classroom, a small classroom, taught by a professor, taught by a TA. These things nobody's talking about.
Right. Wow, what a huge advantage you're giving to these students. I mean, just you're coming at it from such a different angle, such a different perspective that it just seems like it's so much more helpful. I mean, like you were saying, that the adults want to take these kind of things. The adults want to have this level of insight into themselves that you're giving to the kids. What a huge advantage to start life off with having some idea of who the heck you are and what you want.
I've seen it happen over 13 years. So we help the student narrow down their dream to 3 possibilities by the time they're a high school senior. By the time they leave for college, they know what they want to do and they don't change. The average student in college without going through our program changes their major 3 to 5 times. So that's the problem. Every time they change their major, now they have to add more classes, more time, and more money. If they transfer colleges, $100,000. Yeah. So helping these families do it right from the beginning is not only what's easy, it's the right thing to do for the long-term plan. And it's just a lot more fun, you know?
Yeah. Well, if you know what you want, you've got that drive and the fun. And like you say, you can enjoy your whole student career because you're not struggling and stressed and, oh, I hate this class, I hate this professor. You've got the end in mind, you know where you're going. It just makes things so much more focused and wow, very impressive.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's being a mother of 4 has truly helped a lot. And working with some amazing students. I work with students from a 3.0 to a 5.0. And from the spectrum to the athlete to the visual and performing artist, these students are mind-blowing what they are able to accomplish. Sometimes I feel like all I have to do is repeat to them what they're telling me. And they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I do, but they don't realize it on their own. And if a parent was to say, you're not going to make money doing art, and I say an art minor could be really valuable, but you need to be able to sell your art. So what about a business major and own an art gallery? Same thing.
But you're not in that box that says, oh, my child has to be a doctor or a dentist or something, like what my kid will be a failure if they just want to go and be creative. That's never gonna, right? They don't have that bigger picture.
Yeah. So it's so fun just to have an outsider help the student figure out who they are.
Fantastic. So Shellee, what advice would you give to parents who are or students who are in this place where, college is a few years away and they just, they're flailing around like a fish out of water and they just don't know what direction to head in. Aside obviously from calling you, which I hope that they will do. And I want you to share your contact details before we leave today. But is there anything like a DIY thing that folks could just do to kind of jump on top of this?
Absolutely. Be 8th grade or younger, because I have some clients who call me, when they're in preschool. 8th grade or younger, the best thing to do is teach them to love to read. That right there is the ticket to a good SAT, ACT, AP, just a really good foundation. I know it seems so simple, but I tell families when you're doing bath time, instead of being on your phone, put the phone in a book or a magazine so they think you're actually reading, because it's monkey see, monkey do, right? They want to emulate. They want to know exactly what you're doing.
Right.
And so that's our first step. 8th grade and above, college tours are the carrot you need to dangle. If you say, I just want you to get all A's, what they hear is, oh my gosh, 4 more years of high school after high school. No. You have to highlight, look at what a college is. You pick the days you want to go to school. You pick the subjects you want to learn. You meet these new people. You get to live on your own. Like, make it exciting, not just more work.
Yeah.
And that is the ticket to them wanting to participate in the work that it does take, but it's very different when it's their choice versus something that the parent says, oh yeah, you're my kid, you must go to college. And I'm guilty of that. I told all my kids you have to go to college, but then I took them to a college and said, now this is what college is.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it's a whole brave new world and it's exciting.
Totally. A football game, a basketball game, a theater performance. It doesn't have to be all academic. It just needs to give them that little thing that says, this is going to be a great part of your future.
It's true, so little of I mean, obviously, I don't want to say it like that. So little of the college experience is learning. It's not actually, that's not really what I mean to say, but it's such a social thing. That is really where I think kids evolve and, figure out who they're going to be. And that's their first real immersion into other, being on their own, being independent, being with other people, assuming that they go to college someplace that isn't, where they're not living at home. But it's like your first real introduction into I guess, the artificial real world, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll never forget the first phone call home from my son at Harvard. He's like, Mom, I have a problem. And I'm thinking, oh no, you just got there. He's like, I put red and white together when I did my laundry and everything's pink. And I'm like, welcome to adulthood, honey, because you passed. And I said, now you need to figure out how to get everything back to white and let me help you. So the reality is sometimes that's just part of adulthood, is the little oops that they can call home and we can laugh about.
Yeah.
But the big problem is if they don't have a plan or a strategy, and either they get in over their head and now they're in debt and now they're feeling overwhelmed and out of control and don't have a plan. And is this worth it? All of a sudden you have like the anti-college, which is not a good thing if you don't have a better plan.
Well, and kids are working a lot of times as well, right? They're working their way through school so that it's hard to study. It's hard to get enough time to do everything. And you're missing out on a lot of that college experience.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say the kids shouldn't work, but you don't want to just be working yourself sick, so that you can't even study and have fun. I mean,
there is a balance.
Yeah.
And some students they can see it and they have it memorized. Other students need to see it, hear it, read it, and then do flashcards.
Right.
So every student's going to approach college in a different way. But if they have the foundation of preparation, follow-up, accountability, the life skills that they need to be successful as an adult, that's when they're going to be successful in college.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I was sort of touching on before, is the fact that, it's with your talking about the social aspect and allowing the child to see this is when this is a transition. This is a big jumping off point for you. You're going to be acting as an adult. You're going to have these experiences that it does allow them to focus on something other than the overwhelm of 4 more years of learning more stuff and doing more homework and things like that. It's just such a different experience that I don't think a lot of kids are really have any idea. They're just not prepared for that, right?
I'm still one of the best kept secrets. I've been on Fox 5 News. I've been in every newspaper. Like, I don't know what else I can do other than talk to wonderful people like you on podcasts and let families know, there are things they can be doing that are not money. I mean, they don't need money to do it. They can absolutely be doing things to prepare for college. And I'm happy to gift any of your listeners a free discovery call with myself, so I can help them to map out what are the next steps, where do they need to do their research. And so, please share that with your listeners, because it's important that people understand it's about the choices they make that will equate to the return on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shellee, why don't you, I'm going to put these in the show notes as well, but will you just quickly share the best way for people to reach out to you?
Absolutely. I would say overall, my website, which is www.collegereadyplan.com. On there is all my social media. I'm everywhere, every social media channel. And I offer a ton of free content. If they want to join, I have a College Ready Debt Free Facebook group where I just pour into that group. I have a best-selling book that you can get on Amazon, How to Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money. And it
Great
was a
name.
bestseller in 24 hours because that's how people are feeling.
Yeah.
They're going to lose their mind and their money, and it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So like I said, the discovery call, they can sign up on my website at no charge as just being one of your listeners.
Thanks. That's really sweet. That's awesome, Shellee. You have really opened my eyes, and I'm absolutely going to share your link and your wisdom individually with people who I know who are struggling with this issue. And then of course it'll be on all my social media as well. But thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks, listener, for listening. I know that you got a ton of value from Shellee, so make sure that you check out her website, collegereadyplan.com. And like I said, the link to the video and the show notes, and to the video and Shellee will be in the show notes. And I hope you will join us again next week.